Dobar dan svima.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for deciding to join us today here at this panel. I'd like to greet, first of all, our speakers, Thomas Lutz, Nataša Mataušić, Elma Hashimbegović, Sasha Petenjak, and all the others that have joined us and are following us. And among many, I can see Oleg Mandic, the boy that was the last one to leave Nazi death camp of Auschwitz. And I'm really happy to see you, Oleg. Greetings, Oleg. Hello, Oleg.
Današnja naša tema
And
je
our subject, our
što imamo tako
discussion
relevantno.
is going to be on international cooperation. So we are very happy to have such relevant people to discuss those matters with, because for every single one of you, this has been such a long time. The time of cooperation, of international cooperation, development of cooperation in international institutions, or if we're talking about public advocacy in protecting the anti-fascist heritage. And in your area, you are definitely special. So I would like to suggest that we can tackle our themes that we're going to cover today, and those are going to include international exhibitions, and then the long-prepared, empty now, Yugoslav pavilion in the Museum of Auschwitz-Birkenau,
I naravno sve vaše teme
and the reconstruction of the memorial graveyards of Kampor, and all the other subjects or themes that you'd like to share with colleagues. I would like
Tomasa Lutza
to suggest that in the initial phase, we will hear from the ones that for so many years have worked in the so-called topography of terror, but is known for his pedagogical works and for the works that are related to the International Alliance for Holocaust Remembrance. And we're talking about that in a special moment when we're expecting that the Republic of Croatia will take over the presiding of the International Council for Remembrance of Holocaust. And what we're mentioning right now is a baseline for further cooperation, because this discussion is going to be published already tomorrow for the colleagues that are interested for those projects. So therefore, it is interesting to me, and you can include whatever you think that is important to share with your colleagues. I would suggest that the first speaker today would be Thomas Lutz. And based on his experience and in relation to the preparation of the post-Yugoslav pavilion in Auschwitz, but also based on his great experience for stipulating international cooperation, Thomas can take the floor.
Vesna, thank you very much. First of all, I have a slight problem with my computer. I hope it doesn't disturb you so much if you hear background noise if I speak, so that's fine. But you can hear me hopefully properly. So first of all, thank you very much, Vesna, for the invitation and to have a chance to discuss this topic with you. As you pointed out, it's also for me an important topic as a historian who works from Germany and with German memorials in this field. Because I think if we speak about this area which was former Yugoslavia, it has two parts from my point of view. The first part is, what does it mean for Germans? And unfortunately, I have to say that for Germany, though this area is not well known, and our task in memorial museums is to explain more about the history in Yugoslavia. That means, if we speak about this, of course, our focus is the period of the Second World War, the occupation by Italy and the Nazi regime, but also the supporting of the organizations in this field. But as we all know, the history starts earlier, and especially it was also afterwards. And I think from my perspective, especially the wars starting in the 90s are very important to consider if we speak about such an international cooperation. And also I have to say in Germany, so now, you know, we have the war in Ukraine because of the occupation of the Russian army, but many people said in Germany, you know, we had no war in Europe since 70 years. So that also makes clear how far away from Germany this area is. We will speak about this. The other situation is that, yes, I think it's very important to speak about what happened in this field. And as you know much better as I, after the falling apart of Yugoslavia, there were conflicts which were also which have to be considered if we speak about history. And for me, a very important point is that also up to now, we have in many of the following states, we have a very strong nationalism. So first of all, maybe I would like to give you two examples. All of you know the gatherings in Bleiburg from the one hand, or the other hand, the Serbian exhibition in the United Nations more than 2 years ago. One typical thing is that the numbers of victims in Jasenovac was there 7 times higher, as we know that they are from our scientific work, especially from what Ivo Pejaković, the director of the Memory Museum, had done. I think that's also quite okay for Yugoslavia, but it's typical also for other areas that sometimes if you have conflicts in a region, and here we speak now about 7 following states of former Yugoslavia, sometimes it's helpful to have someone from outside who can advise your work, and you can like to be something like a facilitator. And that was my work. Maybe it starts 15 years ago as the UNESCO, the office in Venice, had the very good idea that it's necessary to erect a new national exhibition in a memorial museum in Auschwitz. As you know, in Auschwitz, many states from which the victims came to Auschwitz have a chance to erect memorial exhibitions with the background of their states. Until 20 years ago, there was an exhibition also about Yugoslavia, but now the idea was to have an international exhibition from the 6 states who were members of the UNESCO. So the Kosovo at the moment is no member of the UNESCO together. And I think this is a very advantage. It would be the first time, as far as I know, in the world that 7 states do together one exhibition about the history of the Second World War. I remember very well as we went for the first time to the Minister of Culture in Belgrade, that the people, the delegates from the other nations fear to go into this building, and they fear that we get harsh conflicts, and they fear that we will be overwhelmed by the idea of one or the other nations. And I think that was the point that UNESCO has asked a delegate from the Mémorial de la Shoah in Paris, someone from the US Holocaust Memorial Museum who vanished after the first meeting, and me to advise this process. And I think the most important thing, and that's what I've been doing also in international committees, so I say what we have to do is we put all our questions on the table. We should discuss it as open as possible, but we can't do any solution if someone is really totally against this. We cannot overwhelm one person. And for me, this was the starting point for a discussion for maybe more than 4 years. And I think another important thing is if you have such discussions that you have an encounter. You need to have a personal encounter, that you sit together on the table, but also that you have the meal together, that you have the lunch together, and so on, have the possibility also to build trust to each other. And that happened also among the historians and the experts from the 6 states. And for me, it was a real great thing that after this intensive meeting, so we met normally twice a year in different countries, so in Serbia, in Croatia, in Montenegro, in Northern Macedonia, in Slovenia. And after this long discussion, it was really great that we had a common understanding, at least among the experts. This was not clear at the beginning, but after 4 years of discussion, at least the historians and the other experts from the field of the science had the same expression. So we wrote together a draft for an exhibition, for this international national exhibition in the Memorial Museum in Auschwitz. And the numbers of victims were clear among the experts. The groups of victims were clear among the experts. The places were clear where the things happened, and the responsibilities of the groups and the persons who were responsible for this. And I think it was a discussion of 4 years, but it was compared to many other discussions, it was not a very long period of time. And I remember very much this meeting in Manchester with the IRA International, the plenary meeting, where Nataša Mataušić from Croatia, Olga Pina from Serbia, and Kaja Širok from Slovenia. Unfortunately, she was ill. These 3 people explained to us, to the 150 members of the IRA who participated, this first draft. So what I've learned is that if you have the possibility to discuss things among experts, to build trust and to do it on a level that it's clear that no one has a majority and can overwhelm the others, it's possible really to get a notion of a history which is a very complex history, a very complicated history, but it can work. Unfortunately, I said it was 2015. Then we need someone who is able to bring it into action. That means we need money. We need one organization, one state who will be responsible for all these building processes, for the erection of the exhibition and other things. And now we are in the year of 2022, and unfortunately do not have until now this exhibition. So you can see that on the level of experts, it worked. On the level of politics, it's much more complicated. So I remember in 2019, I was in one of the states. I spoke with 2 ministers, and these 2 ministers were not from the right wing. But they said, yes, you are right, but they hesitated to come really to support us, because they feared afterwards they will get problems with the own national people in their countries, and that could be a problem for the next elections. That means, so on the one, we are in a process that on the one hand, so on a level of experts, and we have a chance to do it on a proper way, it's helpful. On the other hand, we see how weak the situation is up to now. So the situation is very weak in Jasenovac, because we need a new exhibitions there, we need a new space there for visitors. We have only few visitors there, we have to deal with this. Now also something happened in Starosajmište, but also there it has taken 12 years from the first meeting until now, but also it's a weak situation because of all the surroundings of this place. So it's very nice that we have this discussion here. I think we have to go forward with this discussion, but also we have to be clear. We need to be strong also in the future, that we have a chance really to fulfill our dreams, to cooperate and to have this international national exhibition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Hvala puno, Thomas.
Thank you very much, Thomas. In the working group that has prepared and prepares the new exhibition for the pavilion in the State Museum of Auschwitz-Birkenau, since the very beginning, we've had the Nataša Mataušić in different roles as an employee of History Museum, and then for some time she was the acting director. and she continues. She knows in what phase is this process because she's been a curator. So maybe we can talk about different dimensions of international cooperation, although this might be a very good correlation with what Mr. Lutz has said. We can also take into account your role of the member of the managing board of the Jasenovac. So you can help me and maybe you can share with us what you have prepared. I think Mrs. Mataušić's mic is off.
Gdje je Nataša? Možda si počela govoriti, samo uključi je. Evo, sad je uključen mikrofon.
Right, now you unmuted yourself. So first of all, I'd like to thank Thomas Lutz, who from the very beginning, since 2011, when the first meeting has been organized in Belgrade, on which it had to be decided what's the new exhibition going to look like, respectively, if the new countries, new states that have succeeded former Yugoslavia are going to get their own spaces for the exhibition, or are they going to work in setting up their joint exhibition? At the meeting in Belgrade in 2011, it was decided, and that's something that I'm very proud of, and really happy, and really joyful, that we will have set up a joint exhibition. So the Block 17 area for the exhibition, we're not going to be divided into different individual countries, but we're going to participate in establishing a common first international exhibition in Auschwitz. So since 1960, in fact, the State Museum of Auschwitz-Birkenau hosts national exhibitions, such was the one of the former Yugoslavia. But no, for the first time, we're going to have one international exhibition where 6 republics of former Yugoslavia participate. Why is that important? Because that's important because we couldn't divide people and victims according to their to today's political divisions. Let's say if someone was born in Croatia, in Auschwitz was deported from Serbia, the borders of today's countries, and we didn't want today's countries' borders to kind of make the division and reflect this division in Auschwitz as well. We also wanted to avoid the division and the concept of balkanization. So altogether, the experts team, where we've had representatives of institutions from North Macedonia, they kind of join up a bit later, but we've had people from Serbia, Montenegro, Slovenia, Serbia, etc. We all agreed together and we all agreed what's going to be the content and the looks of the exhibition. Of course, that here we've had lots of support from our cooperators or consultants. Bruno Balaye from Memorial de la Shoah, the representatives of the State Museum in Auschwitz. So the people that from the very beginning have worked with us, and they are saying that the key subject of the new permanent exhibition is going to be the victims that have suffered from the area of the entire former Yugoslavia. I can proudly say today that after many problems that we have faced in the meantime, that were not technical problems, but were political problems, that finally Kaja Širok from Slovenia, Olga Manojlović, Pinter from Serbia, and me from Croatia, as an editorial team that has been chosen or elected in Sarajevo in 2012, that we've been able to complete this very
muzeja u Auschwitzu. Naravno, posredstvom UNESCO, odnosno Siniše Šešuma, konačno je taj scenarij naš koji ima preko 100 stranica distribuiran.
And we've been able to create 100 pages of materials distributed to all the ministries competent for this project. And we believe that in a short time, the ministry will choose the residents that are going to look at our works. And since we have exchanged all the information and that we exchanged all the photos and documents, and jointly we have made the choices. We have never conflicted or came into conflicts with each other when it comes to some of the data. What was my greatest fear was the number of the victims of Jasenovec camp. Well, we all agreed about the number of the victims, and as such, this number has been stated in the scenario, and we're talking about 83,000 victims. And we hope that we've managed to create such a scenario where the descendants will not have many objections, or if they're going to have them, we will manage to kind of balance them. What is the biggest problem today is the fact that, for instance, for Croatia, the problem is that there are very few survivals from the Auschwitz camp. So that's why I would like to especially greet Oleg Mandić, and whom we have recorded once again, so that one concept, as Thomas Lutz must know, we have four content parts. We're talking about space, time, victims, the collaborationists or the organizers, in fact, of the crime, the resistance to the camp.
Nažalost, njih je sve manje i manje. Uspjeli smo evo ponovo snimiti Olega Mandića, Oto Konštajn koji je u Zagrebu još jedan.
And we've also worked with one of the other survivors from Zagreb, but he refused to cooperate, and he said he cannot retell the story because his heart is going to break once again. So now we're looking for some other survivors and witnesses that are going to give their contribution. What is most important, in which Rajka Bucin from Croatian National Archive is working, is the individual register of victims from the camp, which is an extraordinary hard and demanding work. And I hope that during the next 2 years, for as much as we think that we're going to need for the implementation of this project, it means that we are going to take our scenario to the assessment and approval. After we as individual states approve it, it's going to have to go into the approval from the National Museum in Auschwitz-Birkenau, and then at the International Council, which, according to the information that we have received from this International Foundation for Victims, and it's located in the Block 17, and those preparations have lasted for 2 years. So there are going to be lots of preparations and lots of time, and this is something that gives us time to complete our individual registry of victims. We assume that we're talking about 10,000 victims, 7,000 Jews, 3,000 members of the anti-fascistic movement, or partisans, like as Oleg Mandić were taken as hostages and sent to Auschwitz. And now I would like to thank everyone else, and thank to Mirna Herman from Zagreb and her family from Osijek, whose members have mostly been killed in Auschwitz. The ones have survived. One part of them has migrated to the United States of America, and there they have created this foundation that has been, they came in touch with the Libeskin studio, and they've hired Herlig Hustinger, who is going to be the curator and the designer of our exhibition. That's going to be their first work in the State Museum, that they've already worked in through the lens of faith as they worked together. And I believe that those are the top designers and top people that our exhibition will.
Prezentacijom u kojoj će u prvom, dakle, planu biti pojedinačne ljudske sudbine i pojedinačne, dakle, žrtve logora Auschwitz.
And that's going to give a contribution to the dedication for the victims of the Birkenau and Auschwitz, or Auschwitz-Birkenau camp. So I just have to say that all what we do lasts from 2011. The last time our working group for the drafting of the scenario or setting of scenario met in Ljubljana in 2017. I forgot, but I think it was 2017. And after that, we have never met again all together. So those two groups that we had created in Belgrade. Then 2011, the experts team that has been comprised of the people that deal with the issue of Holocaust, genocide, and remembrance culture of memory. And the other group, which has been comprised from members of different ministries. But despite this, because there was no some sort of a political support for us to meet, so the experts team, the three colleagues, we have worked very hard in setting up scenario, and now the results of our work have been sent for assessment to the competent ministries. And I would like to thank to UNESCO, definitely Siniša Ščečuna, in name that has organized 2 meetings in Belgrade, where we went through all of the collected materials, documents, photos, video, registries, and we chose the ones that have been the ones to present us in the best possible way the subject that we are covering. And we should not forget that the exhibitions are a constant media of communication. They cannot be over showing and over knowing, but we should emphasize the theme or subject that we know and to stipulate the further interest of the other visitors to go deeper into the subjects according to their own wishes and desires. I'd like to end here. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Puno hvala, Nataša. Biće prilike za raspravu i drago mi je što je danas s nama Elma Hašimbegović.
Thank you so much, Nataša. We'll have time for discussion. I'm happy that we have Elma Hashimović. Some time ago, we've had a round table in the History Museum of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and she is the head or the manager, the director of the museum. And then we talk about international cooperation and also the museums of revolution. And we'd have to say that the History Museum of Bosnia and Herzegovina is the most successful one. And that's, I would say, exactly because of the reason that Elma leads it. Although recently we do not have too many chances to cooperate due to strange decisions by EU on how the funds will be dispersed. For instance, from European remembrance funds. So there's projects that dealt with protecting the heritage from World War II that are financed in the EU are financed by one line. And from the post-Yugoslav countries that are not members of the EU from a different budget line, but I can be very happy. I am very happy when I remember the setup of the pavilion, which had been dedicated to the breakthrough and the prisoners or the detainees in the camp of Jasenovac and all the people that have participated in it. And then I can remember later on the exhibition that with the support of high school students have been created by the curators of Historical Museum, and that has been dedicated to the World War II Sarajevo and Bosnia and Herzegovina, which was an excellent one. I don't want to take too much time, but Elma, please take the floor. Thank you very much, Elma. I was preparing to talk in English, but I can see that you're using our language, so I think I can feel safe to continue our language, right? Right? We have lots of participants here that can understand this. I'd like to say hi from Sarajevo, from the Historical Museum of Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's raining here, but it's warm in the offices, which is one of the new elements of the work in the museum because it's getting warmer here. And of course, although the cold and the winters did not prevent us doing our work in the past neither. So I have participated in different international projects and cooperation of and organizing of the exhibition in Auschwitz. And when somebody would have contacted us, this Historical Museum of Bosnia and Herzegovina, the legal successor of the Museum of Revolution, which has a very rich archive, photo archives and documentation centers and so on and so forth, and the other materials that are related to World War II and to the Holocaust. So my first suggestion is that there's going to be some sort of a initiative, and the cycles on which Nataša spoke, that the History Museum of Bosnia and Herzegovina would be one of the partners. The other question is if that's possible to not do it with political background, because does that at whole have to go through the ministries, competent ministries and so forth? We don't know how can this be avoided if we're talking about the future and organizing about some international exhibition or similar projects. This is what I'm saying among the others. I'm not sure how much is this implementable in the other institutions, but I'm talking from a very specific situation. From the position of a public institution, state institution, that for 30 years does not benefit from public budget, but is left somewhere in the air because of the unresolved property issues and political situation. The 30 years of post-Dayton Bosnia and Herzegovina. So we have one museum which has all of the features of the museum, including rich collections. It has this legacy to deal with the World War II, among the others, but it has no public, respectively, no decision for public financing. So therefore, this is at the core of acting. Everything the museum does for 10 or more years is something that is developed through different forms of international cooperation. Then one of the decisions is that we would get financing for supporting our work. And the other one, it's just as important in terms of strategical positioning of the museum, is to offer an alternative to ethno-nationalistic narratives and mainstream lines that, or then to the museums and memorials that are part of some sort of a state structures that cannot be avoided. And this international component to us is very important when we're thinking also about World War II, but also when we're talking about the wars in the 90s. And Thomas mentioned that the museum is dealing with this recently as well. So we should move out of the national frameworks, go from national bold lines, and we can achieve this through international acting. Those are two of the lines of acting. We're talking about international cooperation. The Historical Museum of Bosnia and Herzegovina has the heritage that it enjoys. As you might know, World War II is very much in the focus. And although thematically we haven't really dealt so much, and we haven't used as much as we could the resources and the collections of those projects, and I would like to mention some of the cases, but I believe I would like this to be more often. That's why the 90s we have tackled, and in the 20 years or so, the museum deals for the 90s, first with its permanent exhibition of the Siege of Sarajevo. And so that the exhibition that does not represent some nationalistic narratives or national narratives, but shares some sort of a story or narrative that can be used as a platform for further discussions and thinking and opinions. From the period of the 90s, socialism is also another of the subjects that we'd like to deal with further, more and in more intense ways. But apart in a couple of decisions, we haven't really been able to impose ourselves in a subject as someone that is a relevant institution or stakeholder. So I would like to have those three pillars as some sort of a baselines when we're talking about how to follow the functioning of the museum. I mentioned why is this international cooperation important in order to bring the transnational dimension in the society of Bosnia and Herzegovina as an alternative to national narratives, to some sort of a nationalistic currents. On the other hand, we would like to create a public program. Everything we do is a result of international cooperation, and be that like last week, we've opened the exhibition of the group Irvin from the portraits of national heroes of our collection, some sort of a form of opening of the subject of questioning of socialist heritage, or we're dealing about some more serious subjects, historical ones. But in this way, we draft all of the public programs with the support of international partners. And we'd like to bring ourselves forward as a relevant educational institution. And one of the ways that we can achieve this, again, having in mind some sort of a transnational dimension, is the fact that we can offer education trainings, first of all, for teachers, and then for a much wider cycle of mediators in transmitting the knowledge. One of the approaches that we are repeating a couple of cycles are international projects that are supported by German-French Youth Cooperation Office, where apart from the members or participants from Bosnia and Herzegovina, we include the ones from Croatia, but also from Germany and France. And then we work in cooperation with our partners from the memorial museums from Germany and France, Ruchenburg, and some other places in France and Dachau. Those are the three partners that organize an entire series of seminars and educations for the teachers. That is one of the ways in how to include ourselves in the international waters. Of course, our goal is, when it comes to World War II, to stipulate the cooperation in researching the issues of World War II. The library of the History Museum is full of literature when it comes to World War II. And on the other hand, when it comes to new investigations and researches, we cannot find the experts or historians that deal with World War II. And of course, there's a problem because there is no relevant historians in Bosnia and Herzegovina, or there's no relevant historians from Bosnia and Herzegovina in those researches. So this museum could be some sort of a baseline for further research. So our resources will be used for further research, because we have lots of materials in our collections. And Vesna mentioned one of the more successful projects in cooperation. We've had 4 countries involved there as well. And we've had a very strange kind of connection. Hungarians kind of came out of the scope. And so we've had Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, and Hungary. And we have dealt there with the heritage of National Socialism, and in the regional perspective. That was a very successful project that I mentioned as a project based on methodology that can be implemented in some sort of a future approaches, where we have included in this concrete case our museum and the local school. The museum offers resources, enables young people to research our archives, and then we've had also lecturing and some educations, and then jointly we have created the joint exhibition. So we created this exhibition and the young people participated in its creation. And then we have been able to produce a good result, because we have worked on this subject that we can as such put it in the gallery of Topographie of Terror in Berlin, because it brings on the local perspective. And it talks about World War II from the perspective, talks from young people's perspective and so on and so forth. So I don't know if I have space to give you some other examples from the exhibitions and projects. We have a lot been focused on various foundations. And BZ, if I heard correctly, was a very right source that understood and supported our last 2 projects. One was a local project, AZ. I believe that Vesna would know, because Documenta is one of their beneficiaries. But we have went forward or applied with the subject of young people during World War II. And we wanted to bring World War II again in the focus of our research and creating of exhibitions, which makes a smaller project. And serves as some form of a pilot project. And now we're talking about a new project, which we cannot say so much about. We can say next year if we have managed to achieve success with it or not. But it's called Where is Walter? And it's focused on World War II and deals with focus and resistance of two national socialism in transnational area of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Germany, and France. 4 partners have been included here. We've had Nataša Mataušić, she's the member of the experts team, and I really am happy for the cooperation. So the idea is that we are going to increase the cooperation between the nations, respectively, different countries, through the various forms of resistance, especially in the post-Yugoslav area. That's why the name, who Walter is, because Walter is a well-known name from this areas to mythical levels. In France, or French and German historiography, he's not known at all. So the idea was to share the knowledge, exchange knowledge, and the post-Yugoslav area is going to be included in the story of pan-European memoria. And we also wanted to talk about how the subject has been dealt with since 45 onwards in the memorial museums in those 4 countries, and how did the narrative about resistance and everything is involved over here. So we've had 4 partners, 4 partner institutions. We have chosen 12 experts from those 4 countries, 3 of which from each of these countries. Nataša Mataušić represents Croatia, and in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the problem was in the fact that you really have very few people that deal at all in such things and can participate in those projects. And we've had really not too many people that would be interested or able to participate. So the result should have been a joint exhibition that's going to be placed in the Museum of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and that includes presentations in other countries as well. Scientific publication is one of the results, an educational portal that will win some wider application or usage for more people. In 2 years' time, we're going to be able to talk about it, what we have been able to implement in this regard, but this was one of the forms to bring in some sort of a European perspective and to bring closer to one another the knowledge that we have from the profession. That was one of the greatest achievements. I'd like to end up here. Thank you very much, Elma. And I'm really happy that this new project is kicking off. And of course, in 2 years' time, it's going to be very interesting to hear about the results of this project. And I'd like to use this time to thank the interpreter. That's me. Thank you for thanking me. And I'd like also to call our lady Sasha Petian, who's going to talk in English. And because of Bashkin, it's going to be easy to communicate in both of languages. And Oleg Mandic is going to try to use interpretation, but Oleg seems...
Onda tamo na njoj, kad pogledaš, piše ne hrvatski ili srpski ili bosanski, nego piše Korean. Pritisni to dugme.
It says Korean, press that thing, and now you're able to hear the interpreting. No, in fact, you have to choose English. Sorry, I've given you wrong directions. Does this function right now? Can you hear Bashkim? We cannot hear you because you have turned off your microphone. Can you unmute yourself? I think he's not being able to hear. Can I ask my colleague, Alice, to unmute him? Because I don't think he's hearing us, nor... Oh. So he's asking for Croatian interpreting, but people are talking in Croatian. Anyhow, Vesna is giving him some instruction.
Stop video security participants. Ideš na onaj gdje piše interpretation.
Nema.
Ako to nije moguće, Oleg, nakon ovog našeg događanja ćemo objaviti 2 snimke. Jedna će biti na hrvatskom, druga će biti na engleskom.
This might be important. Oleg was told that he's not going to be able to use or to listen to interpreting services. He's going to be able to hear the recorded version in one or the other language. So that's what I can do from the distance here, since I'm not in the same room with you, to help you find the right click in order to activate the interpreting services right here and resolve this technical difficulties. Now I would like to ask Nataša Mataušić to take the floor. I would like to use the chance to greet Blanka Janišek, the ambassador, and she is the member of the Commission for Holocaust Remembrance in Slovenia. Sasha, please take the floor.
Thanks for being here together today, and I was really happy to meet in person Thomas and to hear Nataša's updates on what's happening, on our common exhibition space in Auschwitz-Birkenau. And it's really an honor to hear from Elma and from Sarajevo or Bosnia and Herzegovina the efforts they successfully carry out for decades, not only years. So it's really an honor to share the same space with you and also with all the collaborators of Documenta and all the participants to this panel. I will introduce a different topic. Now, as you might know, I am a journalist based in Slovenia who's more than 13 years engaged through an NGO sector in the memorial remembrance field of remembrance. And my specialization is an advocacy of the internment in Italian fascist concentration camps for civilians. So we will switch our attention to the war crimes of Kingdom of Italy, specifically during the Second World War, but with the awareness that the criminality was initiated at least 20 years earlier. My work began because survivors found me somehow and wanted to talk about it. So I began to have a contact with this part of our common European history, because I used the tool of oral history, an interview, to record the experiences of last survivors. And at the time, also the Research Center of the National Academy of Science and Arts carried out a project of collecting for the first time after the Second World War testimonials of survivors of internment in the fascist camps. And what we did in a collaboration, we succeeded to target 50 survivors, collect their testimonies. But what we as a non-governmental organization succeeded is that we used art to create an exhibition and to create something that could raise the awareness about the criminality of the fascist regime. We did it for our connationals because in our national history and in the history textbooks, this part of the Second World War was omitted. for at least 2 decades, if maybe not 3 decades. I forgot the exact data, so excuse me. But also we learned that at the time that the Encyclopedia Britannica didn't include the Italian fascist camp system during the Second World War, but also before that. And that was really an alarm. From there, we also made just a thought, what does it mean to have such a historic memory piece missing in the collective memory of European Union? And in this regard, we also began to use a term that what we are missing, it's a history of small nations. That could be Slovenes, Croatians, Serbians, Bosnians, and so on and so on. What happened since 2013 is that this body of work really created a huge international collaboration. It couldn't be only national, and we were not satisfied. But what was also our aim? On one level, our aim was to educate about the past events, and we based our educational concepts on building creation that particular horror and injustice happened, for example, on the island of Rab in Croatia during the World War II, because there we have an important archaeologically also monument, remembrance space. And that we need to remember those occurrences along with other terrible actions of Second World War. Not only because there were concentrated people who were harmed, but as a window into something larger. The large body of work that was created predominantly, collectively, was created so that everybody may ask, how did this happen? Who did this? Why did they do it? And what was that, a random horror or an event that occurred as an accident or as an event that grew out of a larger context? And some of you already mentioned that what you are doing, it's important on the educational or also awareness rising level to reinforce asking questions. So for us was also important in a collaboration, for example, with Italian collaborators, with German collaborators, with Croatian collaborators, Slovene collaborators, that somehow become aware of the context, that was a military and political agenda of the Italian government. As you know, there is still a persistent neglect or oblivion that's institutionalized in Italy. And now with the results of the recent elections, this is really should be concerning every one of us, because the fascist party or pro-fascist party took over the politics. What was also important for us as an international community of NGOs or research institutions or museums was also that apologies and admission of guilt should happen. That never happened. It happened from the side of Croatian and Slovene government, but it never happened from the Italian government. And what was important for us is that each of these people who was brutalized and their relatives or descendants should live with recognition that what happened wasn't forgotten nor excused. And our stance was that this is what humans can do for each other socially and politically. So we were acting more as an activist or advocates for this memory to stay. Where we are now, after 15 years or 13 years, we have a large body of work, including also a documentary movie, a radio documentary, a large body of preserved testimonies, an exhibition, and we constantly try to keep the argument alive with the different projects or financed by the European Union funds or institutions, as also Elma mentioned, and we are trying to gain enough support on the national level because the largest and the most important commemorative place, which is based in Croatia on the island of Rab, needs reconstruction, architectural reconstruction, and the memorial site, it's important also in terms of our common European heritage on the level of modern architecture. It's an important commemorative space for Slovenes. It's the first or the top, along with the commemorative space in Italy in Bazovica. What's happening is that, again, on the political level or governmental level, there is not such a movement and engagement as we are learned or as we know, as Nataša or Thomas presented what was done since 2011, or if we list all the actions we did in our collaborative projects, we are risking that next year, where there will be an 80th celebration, yes, an 80th anniversary of the liberation of the concentration camp, the memorial site won't be reconstructed. It risks to be, part of them risk to be severely damaged, and part of them needs to be rebuilt. Also, what we bring in all these actions is we represent also the needs of the representatives of survivors, like a concentration camp association. They also don't have enough power. What was also needed, it was also important to introduce the recognition of the criminality of Italian fascism within the documents that also IHRA created, or similar would probably be needed on the level of the European memorial policy, and so on and so on. But for us, working now on this maintenance of the historic memory, it's important that the Republic of Slovenia, in collaboration with the municipality of the island of Rab, finds or creates a working group that will really engage in the reconstruction of the memorial site. I believe I said more than enough. What I would like also to share and make known is that one of the first projects on this topic was a mapping of all the sites that Italian fascism established since the 1920s. The map is available online and it's titled I campi fascisti.it. And you will be shocked on how many locations you will find on that map. Each location is supported by archival material and, if possible, with visual documents and a testimony. And the locations are more than 400. With different levels of not only internment, but also imprisonment or other forms of what's said in English. I'm sorry, I cannot remember now the term, but I believe you got the message. So this is I believe that that's what I wanted to offer today to you, and thank you very much. It was an honor to present this to you, to such an audience. And if you have questions, I'm available. Thank you, Nataša. Thank you, Lutz. Thank you, Elma, and Oleg. Thank you.
Puno hvala, Saša. Alice Straniero je u chatu svima poslala web stranicu Campi Fascisti.
Thank you very much, Sasha. Alice Straniero in the web chat, she has sent the web page of Campi Fascisti, and she has been the partner in this project and on the area that worked between the remembrance and oblivion that has been supported by the European Union. I just have to say that the town of Rab, with the support of Ministry of Culture of Republic of Croatia, started in working in some of the reconstructions on the memory sites on the island of Rab. But I have to say that those are minor interventions, and the minor objection that we're facing is going to be some sort of a more wider intervention, and some of the challenges are the circumstances that are really horrible, and maybe the memorial graveyard can be damaged, can be destroyed, all those things can be brought down. So it's very important for this reconstruction to go through international cooperation, and this international cooperation is going to be really hard to be done without international cooperation, and has to be done until the day of the collapse or the failure of fascistic Italy. And I hope that we're going to be even able to do it before that time. And all of those negotiations and all those cooperations and are going to be set forward towards European members of the parliament and towards local politicians, that it might represent a small drop, that might represent a small contribution for all of this. And now, after thanking all of you that have discussed so far, I'd like to open some space for discussions, for comments, and for exchanges between the members of the parliament and everyone has been here with us today. So please take the floor or simply unmute yourself and you can feel free to start talking.
Nataša, do you have to unmute yourself?
Hvala, Tomas. Nataša?
Evo me, jesam tu.
Can you hear me? She's asking, and I think we can confirm that we do. Well, I forgot, maybe unintentionally, but I forgot to mention another international project. When Documenta was one of the main organizers, that's this University of Udine, that's the exhibition called Here's Where Italian is Used and Here's Where Roman Salute is Used. That's the exhibition that was organized by the Camp Campor, and we participated in establishing the camp from the very beginning all the way until it has been liberated after the fascistic Italy had capitulated. And I have been one of the authors of the exhibition. I have to give myself credit for that. And we've had lots of authors' works, students from different countries, from Croatia, from Slovenia, from Bosnia. And Vesna might know better, but we've had also the comics that have been created on the subject of concentration camps and similar ones. And the camp was opened in March, and as far as I know, we've had a really good response from the people that have visited it. So that's also one of the international projects, and that's one of the important ones. And because of this one, we've had also the status from Italy, who at the time when the camp existed were organizers of the fact that many people from Croatia and Slovenia would be arrived to the camp of Campor. And I have to say that there was a big change and difference between the attitude of Italian fascists towards the Croatians and Slovenians, who were there in the largest number, and towards the Jews that were there at the beginning of the war as well. So the camp was closed down after Italy capitulated, and with the liberation of its detainees itself. And what's the most important thing is that the most of them have joined the partisan brigade of Arab, where there was a department that was made exclusively by Jews, or one unit that was made exclusively of Jews. So this is just one of the forms of international cooperation, and that's what's more important. This is this one where the ones that have been suffering participated there, as well as the ones that have been among the perpetrators. Thank you very much, Nataša. Thank you very much as the curator of this exhibition in Udine, where the exhibition was presented. And for sure, it's been very well visited by the students, but also by the citizens of Udine. And we hope that this exhibition is going to be able to be presented in other cities, perhaps in Trieste, and in Croatia, in Rijeka and Rab. And it's been really important that Slavko Molnar, who as a boy has survived the camp on Rab, and later Gonars, where he's been sent after his village has been burned down, the village of Ravnice in the area of Gorski Kotar, alongside his entire family. And it was very important for him to talk about his memories. Marica Šimić also spoke about her memories, that she does not really remember the camp itself because she was too little. But her mom has, as a little girl, after the capitulation of fascistic Italy, her mom took her out of the camp. So to them, it was very important as children that have survived the camp to speak in front of the students in Udine. And I believe that Oleg Mandić, who is with us today, has lots of experiences with much larger groups of school students, high school students in Italy and Croatia. And we have to say that those are some really great and important opportunities, and that whenever we can combine those exhibitions with educational activities. And we have learned so much from one another. And I would say that we've learned so much from Elma and Mr. Lutz and from many others. So it's very important that we are support to one another. With Sasha, we are preparing a study visit and public discussion in Koper in Trieste. So maybe also Sasha can tell us a little bit more about that. And I will ask kindly Alice to write to us in the chat and to send us the link for participating in those events. And they're going to be in Trieste and in Koper mid-October. And I hope that some of you will decide to apply for that, or at least to send the invitation to somebody else who might be interested in this. Because whenever we can, we're going to try to bring together the works with the youngsters, the exhibitions, artistic interventions, and through the study tours and through memory walks, our marches, they do have certain impacts that are wider, and of course, sometimes they're supported by actions, but we're not giving up, and we're trying to do it one step at a time. I don't know if we have anybody's intervention yet. Maybe we have Sasha. I believe that Mr. Oleg would like to say something. How does it sound? Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. The camper has kind of integrated me a little bit. Vesna says as well. And she says it during her lectures. That's what happened around Udine about 4 years ago. I'm doing my best to try to hear Mr. Mandić, but so we were in the school. We've had an exhibition over there, and there, during the ongoing communication, I came to the information that some organizers during my time there, have had an artifact from Rab, from Kantor. They've had a gaveta. That's a dish from aluminium. That was used by soldiers and was used also in the camp.
Na toj gaveti je bilo sa nekim oštrim predmetom.
And here we've had some sort of a sharp tool that was used inside of the dish, where it was inscribed and written the name and the last name of this person. Pokrajac was the last name, and I forgot what was the name. And we have tried to agree to get the authorization, try to make kind of a consensus on a matter that has been some sort of a detainee from the camp. And we tried to find this person, because this person probably is not living anymore. But he might have some sort of a members of the family that lives. And the media in Rijeka published a photo of this person, Pokrajac. And since Sasha said well that there's been lots of Croats from Gorski Kotar, where the camp. But at the end, we understood that it must have been a Slovenian last name. And really, some of them have stepped ahead, stepped forward, but they had no relation to this at all. But I came in touch with the magazine Delo from Ljubljana, and Anja Inkat from Delo made an action, or organized an action to find some followers, some relatives of her, but unfortunately there's no result in this thing. Although they want to create some sort of show with the fact and to kind of find those people. So why I'm saying this? So we're talking about a very small event, and which shows how the cooperation is possible. And we have people from 2 countries that have participated in this thing. And we've had even 4 countries present or on board for something to be able to move forward. And that's the first chapter. My first chapter of my intervention here. But in fact, today I've been interested in not only that the initiative that is interesting, but great. Why is that so? Because I've been for 13 times in Auschwitz. And I know that whenever I get the chance here, something interesting would come. And then whenever I go back to Auschwitz, I wonder what's happening there with that. Well, I was interested to know if the ministers have actually responded to that. But in the earlier discussions I've heard that we're expecting that by mid-2023, something is going to happen in this regard. So those new friends from Auschwitz, will be content with any sort of information that we might have. Thank you. And it's very interesting in intention. Maybe that's also the contribution from Sasha, and I didn't hear properly the last part. In any case, I'd like to thank all of you for listening to me, for having me here. And thank you very much for dealing with this. Thank you very much, Oleg, for being with us today. And thank you for your comments. While I believe and I hope that you're going to be able to go once again to State Museum Auschwitz-Birkenau, and once the pavilion is going to be open, I believe that it's going to be the best thing to do to have you at the opening and to say a couple of words. And let's hope that it's going to be very soon, for sure. And that's what's going to happen. And thank you very much for showing us your photo. And I'd like to tell everyone that perhaps don't know who is on the photo. You can say something about this photo. This has been a photo that has been made after 28th of March, 1945. That was at the entrance of the Auschwitz-Birkenau. We have, if I understood well, one of the guys was a Jew with him. I can hear so badly. So he was saying about the impression that he had of the Russians and the way they were so happy to see them. I'm really sorry, Mr. Lutz, but I couldn't hear so well. Mr. Mandic.
Ne želim politizirati. Dobro da kažem to. Ja sam po čemu...
He's saying that this was enough to say that. Why is it that I'm Oleg? Oleg is a Russian name, and I have always been presented as 1/4 Russian, because my babushka, my grandmother, this one here, this one on this photo, this is my grandmother, my babushka. And with them, they have some sort of a Russian. Kind of took this photo together. But so I'm 1/4 Russian. I know that my grandmother died at her age of 105. Somewhere in the 60s of the last century. She was presented as Russian. She wasn't, although she was born in Kiev. She was not aware of the fact that I was different. But unfortunately, but the others have imagined that it would be different. But about this, we cannot talk and not go into the politics. And I hate that. This person here in the middle, that's me. That's my mother, who was 39 at that moment. She was 39. You can imagine the coincidence. So she came out of Auschwitz. And then she died, and in Zagreb, she died in a traffic accident when she was 60-something. Thank you very much for this brief intervention, not a demonstration. Thank you very much, Oleg. I am very sure that you're going to be able to find the right words when you're going to come there at the opening of the exhibition. Well, if there's no more questions by anyone else, I would have a question. And that would be a question for Mr. Thomas Lutz and for Nataša Mataušić. What do you expect from the Croatian presidency of International Association for Holocaust Remembrance? Is that, according to your experience, will contribute to improve Jasenovac's memory site? Or will a couple of things somehow become easier? Will that be influencing the number of the visits? What do you think about that?
Who shall start? Shall I start?
Please, Thomas.
Yeah. So I spoke with the head of the Croatian delegation. She visited me here half a year ago, and I pointed out that Jasenovac and also Starosa Mešće are important sites, and that the Croatian government should use the chair year of the IRA to promote it and to continue with it. And I think, first of all, maybe you can say, yes, the IRA has a different view. They're dealing more with the Holocaust as with the other crimes, but nevertheless, thanks for all the insights I heard from you during the last 45 minutes. I think all the history we are speaking about is international history. It's not a national history. Also, if the sites are now in one specific state, so the history which happened there is an international history. And the good thing in the IRA is that also other countries who are involved in this history, Germany, Italy, Croatia, Serbia, Slovenia, are members of the IRA. So maybe if the chairperson is willing to do this, what one can do is to have, at least on the plenary meeting, some declaration of common declaration of all these different states connected with all the other 30 member states, that something should happen there, it must happen there. That's the first thing. And in former times, maybe then the chairperson will say, oh, we have only 3 days for a meeting and it's too short, we can't make an excursion to one of the sites. But in former times, we have organized, sometimes by our own, sometimes by the leading countries, study trips. So if the conference starts on Monday, then we arrived in this area on Saturday, and on Sunday we organized a study trip. Maybe this could also be a suggestion for this lady, that something continue. And I think if there's a statement of all of the IRA in the plenary. Also, if it's only one statement, but it's in a row of everything which continues, it's a one step forward. That's the first thing. The other thing is, at the moment, so the long-lasting and very well-financed IRA project is a project called Safeguarding Sites. And the idea of this project is to visit specific sites until, I think, next year, or maybe now because of the pandemic, it's prolonged to 2024. And after this, they will write a memorandum what's necessary to preserve and maintain historical sites of crimes committed during the World War II. And at least for this group, so hearing something about the Raab Island and hearing something about other places is very important. So maybe you should use this year. So the lady from Romania is the leading person of the Memorial and Museums Working Group. Maybe one can ask here in Gothenburg at the end of November to have a presentation, to have a short lecture about the sites, and maybe the suggestion, if possible, to visit the site, or to have at least a presentation about the sites in, I think, in May or June next year. If this group is in, I think in Zagreb will be the first place for the meetings of the IRA next year. So maybe these are very small steps, but nevertheless, hopefully small steps forward in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Nataša?
Jel me čujete?
Sad te
Can you hear
čujemo.
me?
Can you hear me? The question is. Yes, we do hear you. When it comes to IHRA or IHRA, the situation has become complicated. First of all, from the academic working group, because Ivo Goldstein has been excluded from it, who definitely is the greatest expert on Holocaust in Croatia. And as he's been, excluded, his colleague and many members have been accepted. They deal with Holocaust and genocide at this level, but I believe that nonetheless, none of them is such an expert such as Ivo Goldstein, as much so as he's the one that has been advocating among all the others present there that Croatia becomes the presiding in IHRA. When it comes to myself, by retiring, somehow I have excluded myself from the Memorial Museum of Working Group, even more so that I've always
Poziv od IHRE na
had horrible
sudjelovanje na
problems when
konferenciji od Ministarstva
I
kulture
got invitations from IHRA and participating in really prolonged so much. We've had the problem in organizing my travel, same as my colleague Raika, who was in this group for information. I'm not sure what was the name of the group. In fact, I'm not sure what group functions or does not function for the time being. What has been the greatest problem, as far as I'm concerned, is that the colleagues that come from different countries that are members of the IHRA, we don't have anything to offer to them in Croatia apart from the museum in Jasenovac and the memorial museum that has been dedicated to the horrible events when Germans have liquidated an entire village. And that for sure is one of the most important museums of this kind. The other kinds of museums of this kind do not exist. So Croatia does not have not even a single museum dedicated to Holocaust. Croatia does not have a single museum dedicated to resistance, any kind of resistance, not only anti-fascistic one, but civic resistance, individual resistance, any kind of resistance. So therefore, I'm wondering, where are they going to go to? And what are going to show to those wonderful people that are going to come to Croatia and from various working groups and so on and so forth. What are they going to be able to show to them? This monument that we have at the Zagreb main train station that was supposed to be dedicated to all the victims of Holocaust, with the Ognjen Knaus, with the North Zagreb Jewish commune or community, was dedicated to all the victims of the Ustash regime. And that is the monument. That is a copy of many similar ones, where we have the original trainway station, which in fact has been which has been part
I koja je od Koprivnice do logora Danica vodila prve zatočenike.
And they have sent the main detainees, and apart from the technical
koja je vodila zatočenike.
The way the machine that has brought back the detainees in those cases. So that should have been the monument, not the one that we have right now. Apart from that, as far as I know, Ognjen Knaus, not only because of his obligations today, could not participate in this conference, although he had wished to be here.
Zemljama koji su članice IHRE uputio pismo da kako jedna zemlja u kojoj je pozdrav za dom spremni, dakle ustaški pozdrav za dom spremni, pod kojim su pozdravom slani u logore tisuće, dakle, ljudi iz Srbije.
People divide people regardless of their background. He should be estimated as a legitimate representative. And I think that discussion is going to be very interesting. The details, not only academic working group, but also in the memorial working group on the conditions of the culture of remembrance in Croatia. I'm really sorry for not being able to be there at the time, but I'm not going to come even if they invite me. Maybe to talk about the new project in Auschwitz. That's all I want to say. Thank you very much, Nataša. I would like to have an additional question, and that is, especially now when you're saying that even if they would invite you, you would not participate. Is that perhaps a chance to talk before or after in some sort of a space that is going to be public, and that we can say something more, and that is going to be in fact somehow related to international association, to give some sort of a civic comment? I don't know. What do you, Nataša and Thomas, think about that? Did you have such experiences? Since we are coming with this point, maybe we can put it in this way, and also maybe address another question. Here we have the addressees, which are related to the issues of remembrance strategies. And we know that IHRA has visited the European History House, and we wanted to send some of the recommendations to Europarliamentarians. Some will have more, some will have less understanding. But exactly today, we're talking about the recommendations in order to send them further so that they will be able to discuss about them. I have just also from Elma a question from the perspective of the Historical Museum of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and from Sasha, for Sasha as well. What are the important recommendations from Slovenia's perspective for Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also from the perspective of all the countries of former Yugoslavia, because the war was waged in the area of so-called Yugoslavia, and that is our common heritage, common history, and the history of World War II. And it's very important to have a way to represent it in such a way as well. When it comes to the European History House, I believe that I can find way more to say about it. I wrote about 20 pages of the exhibition, which I think is not a good exhibition because has lots of artistic elements. It was very hard for me to read the European history, especially the history of World War II and the most difficult subjects of Holocaust and genocide. I don't know. I don't have any feedback on what was the museum, what did the Museum of European History respond to our objections. I think they just played deaf, and that they are saying that it's not related to them. And regardless of what we have had when it comes to the data that is lacking. Thank you very much, Nataša. Thomas has raised his hand. Thomas, please take the floor now.
Yeah. First of all, I regret very much what Nataša said, that delegates who worked in this case for Croatia for many years in the IRA now are thrown out. Unfortunately, that's not the first time, because the foreign offices of the countries are responsible to decide who is a delegate and who not. And so if you have a new government, sometimes you have new delegates who are political fine, but who don't have a real clue about what they are speaking. That's the problem of the IRA. That's one of the problems. The other problems is if you mention the House of European History, I can underline what Nataša said, and unfortunately the IRA is from my perspective, a paper tiger, because also I've written, so the IRA paid me a trip to Brussels a few months after they have opened. I wrote also a critical paper. We had a delegation trip, I think it was in 2019. We in the Luxembourg plenary, the delegate, so we wrote a paper where we had some suggestions for the IRA to be critical to it, but nevertheless to start a conversation with this institution. But as far as I've heard, nothing had happened afterwards. That's really a pity, because I think it's very problematic if you have the idea to have from top down, you can build a European kind of memory. I think, first of all, we are much more differentiated, that it's impossible to have one European kind of memory. And the other thing is, though the House of European History is concentrated on the August 23rd, so on the Hitler and the Stalin Pact, and though the main goal is to explain that these two kinds of terrorist regimes are the same and are doing the same. And from my perspective, I think that's the wrong history. If you would like to deal with the European history, if I could make a suggestion, I think the revolution in 1948 is much worth to use it as a European history. First of all, it started. You had it in Ireland, you had it in Wales, you had it in Middle Europe, you had it in Hungary and other places. So it really went through whole Europe, and they had two main goals. The first goal to have democratic countries. So since when do we have this? And the second goal was we have a social welfare system and unique social societies. And I think that's a very important topic that we all have to deal with it also up to now. But maybe this is also too problematic for having it as a European kind of common dealing with the kind of history, because many states have to have problems with this situation in the society, that they are on a social level, they are more and more divided. So it's not a very good answer, or not a very seeing forward answer, but unfortunately I can't say any other thing.
Thank you, Thomas. Sasha and Elma, would you like to add something?
I'm leaving the mic to Elma, and otherwise I have a new subject that I would like also to initiate, since we opened the floor. Elma.
Pa nisam sigurna da mogu sad nešto doprinijeti moj prethodnoj raspravi, osim što mi je bilo interesantno ova priča.
Sure, I can contribute anything in particular in this discussion, although it was very interesting to see the discussion about the House of European History, and we had a couple of comments that I cannot really classify. Those new information were really interesting. And it's really interesting to talk about this perspective. And I've had the invitation for the study visit in Trieste and whatever. It says only for EU residents. And that tells you a lot what it means to be outside of the EU. And how can you talk from equal basis or participate in anything like this? Not only in the study trips on the sort of the policies, but from some most basic study visits. You only have to fight for us. I have a advice for Nataša, especially from her nice, comfortable retiree position. She can do way more. No, I haven't totally rested down, but I'm just retired, yes. You have also some sort of a legal position that no one can do anything against you in a sense. And you can really help all of us a lot in all of those activities. Nataša, thank you for working so hard while being retired. And I would like to bring the attention to the fact that Blanka Avnishek has supported the proposal of Mr. Thomas Lutz to send for sure the proposal. And Elma, if you're interested in this study visit, there is a creative way to go with it. I know, but I'm just basically angered by this instant moment of disabling the approach. This is going to be very important in our recommendation, that there's some sort of an expectation that in the post-Yugoslav countries, we are going to come back together as much as possible and whatnot, while the financial mechanisms to support this do not exist. And this is something that is really tragical, because we have cooperated more some years ago among each other than now. The situation is just worse and cooperation is badly needed. So this is something that we're going to have to underline clearly. This is a big problem, yes. Sasha, you have had some other proposal. Yes, I would like to add another subject.
I would like to introduce another topic since we are so active, and for me, it's also important to initiate the presentation of the existence of the Italian fascist camps in Yad Vashem. As it is known, there is a map that doesn't include the existence of such a system, and it's important for this to become known. We have more than enough research on the level of historians. It's established the situation. So to have a map which includes also the Italian internment system aside from the Nazi German camps would be great. And I believe, as far as I know, this kind of request was already exposed and made, but also put aside. And I would like again to hear your opinion, or maybe to share experiences or knowledge about someone else who already made such a request in your circles.
Hvala, Saša.
Thank you, Sasha. I think that it is a very important, really serious request, because in the fascistic concentration camps, we've had detained Jews. They've had better position than the Slovenians and Croats that have been detained, but they've been detained. So, I don't know, maybe Thomas knows something about the previous requests or demands. I haven't been informed about those ones.
No, maybe 20 years ago, I had a closer contact with memorial museums in Italy, and also we raised this question. There was in Faramonte Tarsia, I think there was one important camp, and we had there was an initiative to do something, but there was no support by the Italian government and someone else from this in this area and I think the persons who did this now, they are too old. But nevertheless, I see that it's important to have this issue also. Maybe as a German, I should be a little bit careful to be on the front to ask others, because I know what we as Germans that we have some lacks in our memory, and we should also work on this. But nevertheless, maybe I will be in Yad Vashem in 5 weeks, and I can ask them there. And if you have any papers and could send it to me, so it could be helpful really to be a little bit stronger with my my question. That would be great.
Thank you, Lutz. Thank you, Vesna, for exposing this. And I'm just throwing in an idea that if it will be also worth, aside from the papers that you mentioned or the documents, to create a civil society initiative or proposal or request. Is this a way of addressing Yad Vashem also, or do you have a different way of addressing them and make or create a proposal? Maybe that's already too much, Nataša, yes.
Nataša,
unmute you.
Mikrofon.
Opet mi se tu.
Sad te
Jel me
čujemo?
čujete sada?
Čujemo.
Dobro, onda mogu ja nešto reći. Ma mislim da je problem sa tim talijanskim fašističkim logorima za Židove na području.
I can say something here. I think when it comes to the Italian Jewish camps in the occupied areas, well, they were more of collective camps rather than concentration camps, the places of isolation where they would bring the Jews to. They existed in Bračo, Korčula, Kraljevica, and Dubrovnik. So an entire range of places along the coast where they concentrated them, but they did not act towards them as against the detained Croats, Serbs, Slovenes, like in the camp of Kampor on Rab, or the Camp Molar, which was one of the worst fascistic camps. But with that were for the detained Croatian and Slovenian people. So if we didn't have enough, maybe I don't have enough information about the neighboring areas in Croatia in comparison to the ones in Slovenia when it comes to the treatment of Jews.
For this clarification, and I can understand it even if I don't agree with it, but you know, as part of the system that concentrated members of the Jewish communities from former Yugoslavia or other regions, you know, and in allegation with the existence of Horatian laws in Italy from the 20s, I believe, and as a consequence, that group of these people were then left to their fate, and many of them were captured later by the Nazis, if that's worth to become known or visible in our common past and memory. Just, you know, I'm talking to us who know.
Slažem se, da.
Yes, I do agree. But in April 1943, the Italian authorities have decided that all those Jews that were in various kind of collective centers or collection centers, to put it in one place, and they've sent them all to Rab. And there have been 3,336. And once this camp has been liberated, all of the Jews have been sent to the area that was being controlled by the partisans, or they have been engaged in partisan units on Rab. There have been about 200 Jews that were old or that did not want to come back with partisans, but after this, they have ended up in Auschwitz. and from hundreds of them or so, just one of them managed to survive. A couple of children that have been hidden by the citizens of Rab and try to save them from the most obvious threaten them. Thank you, Nataša. And also can see in the chat the proposals from Blanka Jamnišek and Thomas Lutz that say that EHRI, EHRI, is going to be a good address, or the European Holocaust Remembrance Initiative, and also the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, who are preparing the publications on various forms of camps. And for sure, I believe that this has to be a multi-layered system of representation for various camps. For various camps should have various layers, and I believe that would be good to give the initiative, to head out with the initiative for this, and then to participate in the dialogue.
I would like to add one more important information. As I mentioned, I began this work in collaboration with Italian partners and Shoah from Rome. And we began with the work of mapping and classification of places of concentration, detention, or other forms of, again, I will skip this English. But what we discovered, we have probably the group from Italy succeeded to come to an agreement with the Holocaust Museum, I believe in New York, about the topic, about the classification, and this was one of the milestones. And I believe it's time somehow to integrate all of these developments that happened over a decade, and to introduce maybe the Topographia della Storia from Italy in this discussion or document. And Nataša, could you add something more, or maybe Lutz?
Svakako ćemo pitati topografiju.
Ne znam da li Lutz, ja samo mogu reći što je Lutz napisao.
I don't know if Lutz, but I can tell you that what Mr. Lutz wrote, the museum, Holocaust Museum in Washington, works on the publications of camps. And we have already done this part of the work from the colleagues from Norway, Goran Kljenović. So we wrote the description of all the camps in Norway, and where people have been detained from former Yugoslavia, mainly Serbs, Croats. That is something that's going to be published in the next page. That is something that is done as an encyclopedia. And then we have lots of other elements in camps where people have lived in very hard conditions. And the greatest majority of them have, felt there and felt casualties. And most of them from former Yugoslavia have been sent to Sajmište. And once it was no longer a Jewish camp, but it became a collection camp. And they were sent to the so-called forced labor in Norway and in our range of camps. And in the other areas in North Sea were most due to horrible conditions, and building the wall over there have suffered from thousands of them, mainly only about 1,000 survived. And I believe that putting this down in the encyclopedia is going to be something that is going to be published together with the decisions for sending them over and their number, etc., how many have survived. And I believe that it's going to be a great publication. Then perhaps we can join this publication with all those fascistic Italian camps that have been, that were created not only in the occupied and annexed territories, but also the ones in Italy, but in Frascetta, in Bonasca, and in some other areas of the territory of Italy. Thomas Lutz would like to take the word, and I would like to bring attention to the fact that we have 3 minutes to 3. Thomas, please take your floor.
I can underline what Nataša said. What I can do, so I have an overview of the about 300 memorial museums only in Germany. And there we have an addition where we write what else overviews there are in the world. And I can add the Italian overview to this list. Unfortunately, I had not did it up to now. The first thing. The other thing I can say for me personally, the mapping is very important. It's very important to understand the history and to get a better view of it. But then the question is, I think we have to incorporate what Nataša also said. We have incorporated different kinds of camps, and that's very complicated also to make clear that they are different and so on and so on. But nevertheless, we should think about this. But as I wrote in my in the chat, so it's not an easy project, and maybe we have to ask if the IRA or if someone else is, or the IRA, not if the IRI or someone else interested in this. But we should really to follow this idea and this line in the future. Also, if I can't say at the moment, I have a proper idea how to bring it into action.
Puno hvala. Vrijeme nam ističe, ali bi...
Thank you very much. The time's taken away, but the recommendations are we're going to try to draft. And I would like to ask you all, we are going to send to you what we've heard. We've had this first part of the panel that has been organized in May. And I'd like to ask you to participate. I know that you're very busy, but it's very important that we will bring some sort of recommendations together. And we're going to send some sort of invitations to the addresses that have been mentioned over here in the cooperation with the partners that we work with and with you as well. If you have something else to add, okay, we go. Sasha, she's raising the hand very briefly.
Thanks. Yeah, you reminded me, Nataša, the Italian group is collaborating with Washington Holocaust Museum, and it was really a decade of work to come together with the classification of Italian fascist camps. I cannot say more because I'm not updated, and I would really like now to know if this camp system is included in the publication that you mentioned. So thanks. Great work. It's amazing.
Puno hvala, Saša. Hvala.
Thank you very much, Sasha. Thank you, Elba, Nataša Mataušić, Sasha Katayan, all of you that have been with us today. You can see that Oleg is still following us, and to Bashkin Paslio has been interpreting this. And tomorrow we're going to publish the recording in English and in our language as well. So I would kindly ask you to follow to this material and everything that you might have missed so far. And we're going to send the draft of the recommendations. So we're going to try to make some sort of a deal about this or agree on this, and we can have the next step, which includes the future dialogue with institutions, national ones or European parliamentarians. And it's very important that we have the very much needed political support, and I hope that in the future we're going to have the support from other politicians. Just one more sentence, because with Elma I'm going to meet next month in Sarajevo, that after going with Documenta to Berlin, I've seen their Museum of Resistance in 3,500 square meters in a beautiful building, that I felt such a sorrow and fury that immediately when I came to Zagreb, I wrote the concept idea for the Museum of Resistance that I'm going to hope to be able to present in Sarajevo. I've presented it at many locations, but there's been no political support and no political will to bring such a museum to Croatia and to build it on. Thank you very much. I've really had a great time. I felt very good. And I was happy to talk about all of this together, about this subject that we are bothered with, and that we want to be understood by the politics, and the politics will understand we're not talking in void, but that's important not only for us, but also for the generations that come after us. and that know very little about that, or almost nothing. Thank you very much to all of you. Thanks a lot, Nataša. And Blanka Mništek says that she's not a politician, and I like to correct myself. And that is because of the wish to have some political support. Although that's really rare, we still have it. So we're going to do the best we can in order to have as much as possible. As for the Resistance Museum, so for the other heritage that is related to World War II and the Holocaust victims and genocide and so on and so forth, and all of the camps.
I saw that Synagoga Maribor was raising a hand. Can we also invite him to talk?
Sure. Synagoga.
No, sorry, I was clapping hands.
Hvala za aplauz.
Thank you very much for your applause. Thank you everyone. And I wish you all a very good afternoon, and we're going to keep in touch for the recommendations, and I hope that we're going to see each other alive